is it about Hawaii that makes it such a popular destination? Is it the mountains and volcanoes? The beaches? The wildlife, adventure, and natural beauty? How did the United States gain control of these islands 2,500 miles off the coast of California? The answer is imperialism. You previously learned about European colonization in Africa, Western Asia, and India. Today we'll look at the expansion of colonial empires into the Pacific Rim, the region that borders the rim of the Pacific Ocean, to answer our three-part guiding question. How did imperialism change how land was used and how society was structured in the Dutch East Indies, Vietnam, and Hawaii? We'll also tackle our big picture question: what themes, patterns, and trends were present in the colonization of Africa, Asia, and the Pacific? We're going to start today's lesson in Southeast Asia, the region in the Pacific Rim located between the Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean, and Australia. Coveted by Western powers for its strategic location and resources, it was also referred to by Europeans as the East Indies. Historically, Southeast Asia has been made up of several diverse kingdoms, each with its own rich history and culture. Between the 13th and 16th centuries, much of this region was under the control of the Majapahit and Khmer empires, two of the last major empires in the region before European colonization. As these empires began to decline in the 15th century, the region was once again divided into independent kingdoms. At the same time, Europe was financing voyages of conquest around the globe in search of valuable resources. The Dutch East India Company, or VOC, was a trading company founded in the Dutch Republic, present-day Netherlands, to protect Dutch trade interests. It established and governed a colony called the Dutch East Indies, a colony in what is now Indonesia. The VOC was as much a government as it was a private company. The VOC assumed the authority to create treaties, establish a military, and govern the people of the colony. Many Dutch colonizers became permanent residents in the East Indies, which resulted in a rigid social structure that segregated people by race and class. At the top of the social pyramid were the Europeans, primarily the Dutch. Next were foreign Orientals, which included Chinese, Arab, and Indian immigrants. At the bottom were the Inlander, or Indonesian natives. The VOC also instituted the culture system, which required native peoples in the Dutch East Indies to pay the Dutch government. Payment could be made in two ways. The first option required villagers to set aside 1/5 of their lands to produce crops that the VOC could export, or sell to foreign nations and people, for profit, like coffee, pepper, and sugar. For those who did not own or rent land, there was another option, spending 1/5 of the year, or 66 days, working on a Dutch-owned plantation. As Dutch trade flourished, trading ports transformed into major urban centers. This created a wedge between urban and rural populations and further separated native people from traditional village life. Let's pause here and add to your response to our guiding question. How did imperialism change how land was used and how society was structured in the Dutch East Indies? Like the Dutch, the French established the colony of Indochina, located in what is now Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. The creation of French Indochina started in Vietnam. When the French first arrived, Vietnam was divided into two rival kingdoms: the north, which was dominated by the Trinh family, and the south, which was ruled by the Nguyen family. Neither were interested in trade relations with Europe. Hoping it would buy them favor, France helped the Nguyen family expand its power and establish the Nguyen dynasty, which still wasn't interested in trading with France. Eventually, Napoleon III, remember him? Decided to invade Vietnam, motivated by a desire to support Christian missionary work and establish overseas trading ports. Despite the resistance of the Vietnamese people, France overtook them. In 1862, a treaty gave France control of much of Vietnam. Much like European colonies in Africa and India, France exploited Vietnam as a source of cash crops and natural resources that could be exported. The focus on producing goods for export meant that the land and resources the native people had used for centuries were no longer used for their benefit. Under French rule, a small class of elite landowners emerged. Their land was worked by Vietnamese tenants. These tenants were forced to hand over up to 60% of whatever they produced, like rice, as rent. The landowners then sold the rent payment to foreign markets, reaping tremendous profit. What if a tenant did not produce enough rice to support themselves after paying rent? Often the only option was to take out a loan from the landlord. This created a system of debt and poverty where tenants were completely dependent on their landlords. Let's pause here and add to the response to our guiding question. How did imperialism change how land was used and how society was structured in Vietnam? The Hawaiian Islands were first settled by Polynesians 1700 years ago. For centuries, native Hawaiians lived in small communities that were ruled by local chiefs. Beginning in the late 18th century, two significant events changed life in Hawaii. First, King Kamehameha united the islands to form the Hawaiian Kingdom. The second significant event was the arrival of Europeans. The first European to arrive was James Cook, who was followed by Christian missionaries. But how did the United States come to control Hawaii? Throughout the 19th century, American business owners established plantations on lands they rented from the Hawaiian monarchy. These plantation owners became incredibly wealthy and powerful by growing cash crops like pineapple, coffee, and most importantly, sugarcane. In 1893, Sanford Dole of Dole Pineapple and the Hawaiian League, a group of mostly non-Hawaiian business leaders who were backed by the United States government, led a coup d'etat that removed Queen Liliuokalani, the last Hawaiian monarch, from power. A provisional government was formed with Sanford Dole as its president. Although the US government determined that the coup had been illegal, Dole was allowed to remain in power. In late 1897, Queen Liliuokalani traveled to Washington, D.C. to ask for the restoration of native control of the Hawaiian Islands. The Queen's pleas fell on deaf ears, and in 1898, the United States formally annexed Hawaii as a U.S. territory. Native Hawaiians were used as labor on plantations, but as the sugar industry boomed, the demand for labor increased. To meet demand, American plantation owners recruited laborers from places like China, Japan, the Philippines, Portugal, and Germany. Plantation owners segregated laborers by nationality, hoping that language and cultural barriers would prevent them from banding together against their employers. Laborers were housed in segregated camps within the plantations. The quality and location of the housing reflected the status of each group according to the plantation owners. White workers lived closer to the plantation owner's home, which was usually situated at the top of a hill. The Chinese, Korean, and Filipino camps primarily consisted of overcrowded barracks. In Hawaii, skilled positions were reserved for white laborers, excluding Asian and immigrant workers from high-paying jobs. Even if laborers of different nationalities did the same work, they were paid different rates. For example, Filipino plantation laborers who harvested sugarcane were paid an average daily wage of 69 cents, or about $23 today, while Japanese workers were paid 99 cents, or $34 today. Japanese carpenters only made $1.28, or about $44 today, while white carpenters earned $4.36 per day, or $150 in today's money. The gaps in wages were also used to create divisions and resentment between peoples of different nationalities. Let's pause here and add to our response to the guiding question. How did imperialism change how land was used and how society was structured in Hawaii? You have now had the opportunity to study imperialism in Africa, Western Asia, India, and the Pacific. Although each colony experienced colonialism differently, you may have noticed trends such as white supremacy, the exploitation of resources and native workers, and the end of local sovereignty. If you ever have the chance to visit Hawaii, you can still witness the legacies of colonialism. To this day, the native Hawaiians continue to fight for the return of indigenous lands. Although its economy is now based on tourism instead of agriculture, you can still visit pineapple and coffee plantations or buy sugarcane at a roadside stand. Why? Well, because history is everywhere.